Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Compelling Conversations podcast. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my friend Chris. Chris, thanks so much
What's
for
up,
being here, man. Yeah, you know
bro?
the best way to begin these is just to be like open and candid. And
Yeah,
Chris, what made you want to be here this morning? Because this is early in the morning, and you're committed to
yeah.
being here, and I really appreciate that. If I'm being honest here.
Well, I mean, I made a promise to you. I feel like I should end up, keeping it at least, right? It's one of the few things that we should be able to do.
Yeah, I like that. Promises. Was there a moment in your life where you realized the importance of keeping promises?
Mm, kind of, and there's like two situations where it's like that. Well, for the most part, one of them that brings to mind is like, oh, my cousin had said, oh, if you're in top 10% or top 5% of the high school graduating class, what's it called? I'll get you a car, just any car, so you can like be good starting off and stuff like that, right? I ended up being in top 5%. I was on stage, like he saw everything, and yeah, he did get me one, but then he ended up having to retract it for what's it called? Extenuating circumstances. But I was like, ah, bro, like I had it, and then it like got swiped away from me at the last second. So I was like, damn. You know what I
Wow.
mean? And then the other one's like if you're in a team, you have a certain amount of commitment that you have to give. And I think teamwork is one of the best things that you can like have, even as just like friends, because friendship is for me like a type of teamwork. Like you're supposed to be able to keep a good amount of like what's it called? Like keeping your word almost.
How do you pick your friends?
How do I pick my friends? Well, I mean, in some cases, yeah, it's like, oh, I know them, and then I'll go talk to them or whatever. Sometimes it'll be more spontaneous, and sometimes it'll be like with how you and me met. You
How
kind
do
of
we
just
meet?
picked me to talk to, if you remember.
Tell the story. I'm curious.
Okay, so what's it called? I had gone to go take Orgo 1 again. It was the first test. I didn't really talk to anybody because I wanted to just get in, get out, just do my thing, be over with the course. But as I sat down to take my test in what was it, the social work building, I go ahead and I pop my pen down, and you're like, "Hey man, are you ready?" And I go, I go, as ready as I'll ever be,
Yeah,
and that's just
I
kind of how it
remember that
started off.
vividly.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, I'm glad you bring this memory up. When you reflect on your time in that, like, what do you make of it?
in Orgo or just
That time in
chemistry
your
or the
life.
time that
Yeah.
we and you have been together.
Yeah, like just all that. What do you make of that time for yourself? What was that for you?
I feel like it was almost like a proving experience because I had already taken Orgo 1 during the pandemic, but it was kind of hard to concentrate. You know, it's at your house. You don't want to do any work at your house, stuff like that, right? So at that point, I was like, bro, I'm gonna have to retake it. There's no way they're gonna let me like slide. So I had to go in and basically prove to myself, like, hey man, you can do this. Like it doesn't matter if anybody says it's hard. It doesn't matter if it's the weeding out class that everybody like fails two, three times over. Like it doesn't matter. You have to do this time, like for yourself.
Yeah, I love that you say that because you're one of the wizards of that course. You're literally a wizard of that course. And I also appreciate you sharing how it doesn't matter what people say. You just have to do it. There's a line in my book that says something like, people create boogeymen that deliver no true fear. And the idea goes like people are always going to tell you things like, oh, that's too hard, or that's
Mm-hmm.
impossible, or that's scary. And then you kind of do it and you overcome it and you realize because of your resilience that it was
That it
okay.
was
It
possible
wasn't
all
all that
along.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. When if you don't mind me asking, the first time when you fell, when you failed, how did that make you feel and how did you overcome?
Okay, well, hold on, let me stop you right there because technically I haven't failed. I only got no credit,
Whoa,
so you know,
whoa. That's
still
yeah.
perfect on those grades.
Nice,
But
nice.
yeah, it just made me feel like, bro, you're in chemistry. You're supposed to be able to do this. It's like it's gonna be part of the your wheelhouse, basically. Like you're gonna have to know how to do this. And I pushed myself to go ahead and get good at something that a lot of people are happy with just like passing, doing the bare minimum. I forced myself to go ahead and like go above and beyond, and it paid off.
Yeah. We discussed once, you and me, about how in some way Breaking Bad inspired you to have
Yeah.
an interest in chemistry. Could you please share your experience with that?
Well, what's it called? So there's this episode where this dude goes into the den of the drug lord Tuco, and he has this little crystal, and it's fulminated mercury, which doesn't really matter. It's just like the official name for it. It isn't even how it's supposed to look. It's supposed to look like a grain or like sand almost. And he's like, "Oh, this isn't what you think it is." And then he like plops it down, and the whole room explodes, and like he gains the respect from Tuco, right? And I was like, "Bro, that's cool." And I'm like, "Oh, like that seemed like a really cool thing to do." And then in high school later on, like um, we ended up having to do summer classes to catch up, and like it was mostly because we were in the IB program, so it didn't like you didn't take certain courses, so you had to make it up during the summer to be able to graduate on time. And physics was one of the things that we took, and we ended up making what's it called, like an aluminum foil, like firework almost. But I don't know if we calculated it right. I don't know, something we did. We knew it was gonna spark like crazy, but it ended up burning enough to like to make a hole in the baking pan that I brought to contain it. So I was like, oh, this is like cool. I want to learn how to do more of this and stuff like that. It was like a connection almost to that one scene and to this, and it just inspired me more to kind of be like it. Plus, it's on TV, so it's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. Breaking Bad, when it came into my life, it played quite the inspiration as well. Not quite in the same way that it inspired you, but I watched that show and Better Call Saul, like whatever had come out, like back to back. And that
Mm-hmm.
whole world was just in my mind. And um, it just kind of showed me that everybody's life, it emphasized again that everybody's life path is just different. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what's happening in whose life. And everybody has their own struggles and they're climbing, they're doing their best to overcome. And it was just interesting to see that with all those characters. It's a fascinating show. Um, yeah. If you don't mind me asking, who do you see yourself in most in that show, in that universe?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a like more difficult question, I feel, because it's like what's it called? You don't want to say the wrong person because it's like, oh, like some of the people did horrible things in that show. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, if anything, I don't know, I'd say maybe, and it's not to like, oh, like I'm like the main character, like whatever, right? But it's like I got into chemistry because it's that dude's thing. So I feel like if anything, it'd be my thing as well to have chemistry be my thing as well.
Mm. You and I are both fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Is there a character in that universe that really resonates with you? And is there a higher reason to that?
Mm, if I remember correctly, you also did this question to one of your other people on the show, and I feel like we're all like very connected to this one character, and they made it so for it to be like relatable, right? But I feel like most of us in STEM courses or something like that can appreciate, Spider-Man.
I
And
love
it's
that.
funny because you mentioned also that you listen to the original Sam Raimi soundtrack. And sometimes before like I had to take a test or something, I would listen to like a little bit of the soundtrack as well. So I was like, oh, yo, I do that too.
Yeah, that's wild. That's so cool that you do that as well. Yeah, Sam Raimi's like Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man.
Yeah,
That's a very powerful role. I also have to say I really like Ant-Man, dude. Like Ant-Man is so underrated. Paul Rudd.
yeah,
And someone I'm glad you mentioned that I discussed this with someone else because um some people think like it's kind of goofy to talk about these things, but I don't think
mm,
it's goofy because
no,
people that they spend so much time discussing the symbolism of myths and fairy tales and what that means to the to human civilization. And I mean, the cinematic universe, these comic book figures, characters, they say something about our time, and what we see in them. And Ant-Man, I really like because he's just kind of like someone who keeps falling flat and getting like walked over, but he's still like, chin up,
mm,
smiling, doing his
yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And I really like that about him. And he's in California, in San Francisco. So I think that's really cool too. Yeah. Do you ever feel like you're alone?
Mm, I actually kind of get that question. I used to get that question a lot. Let me be clear, and it wasn't because of the reason you think it is. It's because I'm an only child. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, like you don't have a brother or sister. Like, isn't that lonely all the time? And isn't it this? Isn't it that?" And I don't feel like it's ever really been that. I mean, I've always had friends, and they always kind of make up for being like there for me. It's like I say, everyone's always just a text away. You're never really like alone per se.
Yeah. Are there ever moments where you deliberately choose to not be in contact with people?
Yes, it's always during like testing periods where I'll go like, oh, like no, I have to go ahead and get my mind into the game basically,
And how do you get your
and I
mind into
have
the
to.
game?
Hmm?
How do you get your mind into the game? But sorry for cutting you off.
No, it's fine. But yeah, it'll be like periods whenever I have to like, okay, no contact with anybody. Like maybe I'll get on to play a game or two, but that's just to like mentally like reset and like come back to it, right? And let me give you an example for getting my head into the game. So for Orgo 1, whenever I was taking it at the same time as you, I was doing practice tests like crazy. I was doing this and I was like literally trying to get it into my mind, these basic rules, because I knew it would help me to further on my knowledge and better have like a foundation for everything else that was gonna show up in that course. And I ended up doing so many practice tests that when I was asleep, I would think about like resonance structures or like whatever, and it would be like even in my sleep, I can't get away with it. But like it worked out because I ended up doing well.
Yeah. And preparation, it takes away a person's fears and anxieties. Did it
Yeah,
do that
for
for
sure.
you? Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
for
Yeah.
the first test, I was like, oh, I don't know. It's the course that like literally almost like soiled my perfect record, basically, of not having a fail a course or whatever. And I
Yeah.
was like, bro, I have to do this, and it has to be on the first one because I know how these courses are graded now. If I mess up on the first one, that just leaves less room for error farther down the line.
Yeah. What's interesting about you saying that is I was never able to do great on the first one, in spite of my best efforts. And then I was always able to like perform stellar on like the toughest ones, like afterwards, which is insane to me because it's like the first one's supposed to be the easiest, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about, things not soiling your record. Have things ever soiled your record in general? And if they did, how did you move past that?
Mm. I feel like moving past it is just like with time and acceptance that like like you messed up, it's fine. Like come on, get back up. And I feel like some of it is just like you being on yourself, like bro, you had it. Like Like you were perfect up until right now. What happened? Like this is not the level of work that you should be at, basically. But I mean, for me, uh, I don't know because what's it called? Sometimes I'll count like not soiling my record as like doing well enough and trying my hardest as well. So if I did well enough and I knew that I tried my hardest, then I'm still good. But it also leads the question as to, oh well, like if you're changing the rules for that, like what is your definition of the set of rules to like have on your record and like basically keep your word and stuff like that. It always comes back to you keeping your word, whether it's to yourself or to others, basically.
Yeah.
But it goes to kind of show like, oh, like is there the definitive set of rules that you kind of have, or does it change with each one?
I like how we circled back to this idea of promises and keeping your word. We discussed its importance, but I'm curious, how do you suppose a person should keep their word? How do you keep your word?
Um, well, I think you should be first realistic. You shouldn't go ahead and promise something that you couldn't possibly ever accomplish. Or like, yeah, reach for the stars, but sometimes it's stars are a little bit too far out there. You know what I mean? But
Land on the moon
I
type
mean,
thing, eh?
hmm?
Land on the moon type thing, eh?
Yeah, but yeah, I feel like one of them is to just be realistic about it, and then the other one is to I don't know. I'd say time is a certain like factor of it. Like in some cases, like yeah, it shouldn't take you as much to do one thing that you promised or another. But in some cases, taking your time is perfectly like all right. Like for me, for instance, keeping my promise of being able to go ahead and get my degree to myself and to ensure my future success and stuff. It doesn't matter how long it should take as long as I get there. And hopefully it's not going to take much longer. But I feel like it's definitely different than promising something like I'll pay you back basically. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah. Are you ever afraid that you can't keep promises?
I'd say so because I mean the thing is to be realistic, right? But also real life isn't very forgiving and it's very spontaneous. You know what I mean? Like anything can happen at most given times. It doesn't matter what it is. So like what's it called? Like something can go wrong and it'll completely ruin what you had from that point on. So it's like, oh, like it's a lot harder to keep. Are you sure you're still gonna be able to like go on with it, basically?
Yeah. That's something to reflect on. I appreciate you sharing that. Where does your hope come from?
Um, I would say that I don't want to be narcissistic, but it's like in your own ability to like see your work. And it's like weird because some people will lose hope because they don't see any growth, right? And it's always been explained that you don't see your growth up until you look back and see where you came from, basically. You know what I mean? So if you look back and see how far you've come, I feel like you regain at least some of the hope that you've lost over the amount of time that you've been there. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter where.
That's beautiful. That's like, I suppose what you're saying is your journey should give you hope, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. It's very interesting you mentioned that because I don't think I've ever fully thought of it that way. Like how far I've come should grant me hope.
Mhm.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Are you happy with where you're at right now? Like just as how you feel, regardless of how things are going, just how you feel. Are you happy with where you are at right now?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like a few things might be better, right? But I mean, the grass is always greener on the other side, as people say, right? But I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
uh, from looking at some of the other things that could have happened, some of the other things that people are going through, and I feel like I should be happy, perfectly happy with where I'm at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing to really complain about.
How do you keep yourself from comparing yourself to others?
That's actually a very, I'd say a very hard thing to do. You know what I mean? Because I mean, it's always all around you. It doesn't matter where it is. Wherever you look, there's somebody else, and they've always had. Well, like you said, everybody's path of life is different, so it's very hard to. At least in my case, I like to see at least some point of view in other people's shoes. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's difficult for you not to compare yourself to other people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It could be comparing yourself so you can better understand somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the things you've been saying, they've really been it's like a washing machine in my head. Like I'm just thinking about it like over and over and over again. Yeah. What is what is something candid that you have on your mind right now?
Mm, if anything, I'd say maybe just like friends. I guess friends. My friends are always on my mind. You know what I mean? And especially like me and you, like you're literally right in front of me. It might not be physically, but you're right in front of me, and we're having this conversation. So it's like friends and family are always on my mind because I mean the first thing I did today was have breakfast and interact with my family. So I think that is one of the first things that probably comes to mind to everyone.
Yeah, family and friends. And if they don't come to mind to someone, how does someone cultivate that way of thinking?
Well, I feel like it should have to be going back to the whole time thing. Time is very important to just about everything. You know what I mean? So I feel like it should be with time and also experience where people will learn to like I don't want to say the wrong thing, but like open up more, or like have these experiences where it'll end up having you to think about these things, right? Because I feel like people are meant to be with like other people, whether it be like a family or friends. You know what I mean? You're meant to be social.
Yeah. When you're like in the presence of your family and friends, how does it make you feel? Like how does it actually make you feel? Does it make you feel alive? Does it make you feel like, wow, I'm really in the world?
I feel like okay, so answering like, oh, I'm in the world is a very interesting type of feeling, right? But I mean, I feel like I always get that sensation whenever, basically. Like I'll have like, oh, like we're really on Earth, bro. Like you know what I mean? Like I don't know how to describe it, but it's like, bro, you're on Earth and you have to go to school for this. And it's like I get kind of I don't know if it's like existential, but what's it called? It'll happen to me randomly where I'll just be like, bro, we're like really living in here. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Yeah.
I was sitting somewhere and I was looking at these people around me. And for the first time I was like, "Oh my God, these are bags of meat." You know, like just the way
Yeah.
we looked was something that I was thinking about. Like, oh my God, we're actually physically in this world.
Yeah.
That's insane. You know, it was interesting. There is something that I wanted to discuss, which is this interesting thing. There's a book by Kurt Cobain. It's called Journals, and they compiled various journal entries of his into this one thing. And there's just one entry that he has. It says, lately I've found myself becoming lazy. I hardly write my stories and I don't work on songs quite as intently as in the past. You know why? Television. Television is the most evil thing on our planet. Go right now to your TV and toss it out the window, or sell it and buy a better stereo. I'm just curious. When you hear that, what do you think?
See, this actually kind of reminded me of something else. It was what's it called? It was my pastor, right? And he had told us a story about almost the exact same thing, where one of the other like preachers would say, "Oh, TV is like the most evil thing," or whatever, right? But I mean, right now that dude's probably in his nursing home, like watching TV. How evil
Hmm.
could that have been if he's like sitting there right now watching the TV? But I mean, I also feel like going back to the TV, right? I feel like it does take a lot of time away from you and being like productive. Even if I do spend a lot of time on the TV, I know I'm not being productive. You know what I mean? Like, it could be better spent studying or like doing other stuff, but stuff requires money to do. So there's
Yeah, that's
also
a good
that.
point. That's a good point. When I read that, I just thought it was so profound because um, it's like a message to artists or to people in general, really. And the idea being, what you're saying, like it takes away so much time. It's like such a distraction and how it prevents you from the important things in life. And so I just thought it was so interesting that, he was living in a time where we didn't have cell phones, but we had TVs. And I don't really watch TV all that much, I don't really sit in front of it but like I have my phone, that's my distraction. So it's just interesting that the distractions are always prevalent and it's up to us to overcome them. Yeah, I just think that's a fascinating thing. Yeah. But yeah, beyond that, I guess, do you have any thoughts on being a part of a community? I'm always curious about people and whether or not they feel like they're a part of the mosaic of a community.
The community in what sense?
Just in general, really. Do you feel like you're a part of something greater than yourself?
I mean, I feel like we kind of should, going back to the whole like existential thing. It's like, bro, like you're on Earth and you have to like contribute at some point to something, whether it be like your artist or your scientific breakthrough. Even in death, you contribute back to the earth. You lend all your organs to decompose and go back in.
Yeah, good
So I
point.
feel like it's very hard to not be connected to anything.
Yeah. What you said made me think about I have a friend who passed away
Mm-hmm.
um, about 2 months ago.
God damn, I'm
And
sorry to hear that, bro.
yeah, thank you for that. He's gone. Like I think about that. Like he's gone. And I mean, he went to UH, he graduated, he walked the places that we walk and he's gone.
Yeah,
And it's just like, damn. Like when you said contribution, I really think about that contribution. But I'm curious, Chris, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say, but you didn't get a chance to, or something on your mind that you wanted to express?
yeah. I mean, I feel like I'll say this, but I feel like it's a little bit cheating because I know you do this at the end of the episode, right? And I feel like I want to talk about creativity
Hmm.
because I feel like you're like I've said before, I have a lot of friends that are creative, right? Whether they paint or make music or whatever. This is also a form of creativity. What you're doing, it's very candid, you know what I mean? You showed me at the beginning, oh, I don't even have like anything written on the paper that I have right now. I see you like jotting stuff down, but I feel like it's always whatever somebody says or whatever something comes to mind that you don't want to lose. And I feel like I've been reflecting like, oh, like I'm not really as creative as like everybody else, right? But I had like a sort of breakthrough where it's like, oh, I might not be creative at painting or like coming up with uh, an idea like this, right? The thing I'm creative at, and I feel like we all have some sort of creativity, is for me being creative with like words, just saying the right thing at the right time.
Wow, that's pretty unique. When you said that, I thought of something you said to me one time. no Paul Infrante. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, the only reason I know that is because of Chris. That's crazy. Yeah. With this whole idea of saying the right things at the right time, do you think it's something that you had to craft or just comes to you naturally?
I feel like I don't want to say it's like intrinsic, right? Like I don't think it's something you're born with, but I feel like it's something that you have to develop over time, if anything. Because I mean, I don't want to say the wrong thing, and I know I say that a lot, but I really just don't want to look bad, right? But think about Picasso, right? I think there was a quote where it's like, oh, if he was his mom told him if he was a preacher, he would become Pope or something like that. I can't remember if it was actually Picasso, but the end of the quote is, oh, he wanted to become a painter, so he became Picasso.
That's deep. That's so deep. Honestly, I felt that. It's like, damn. Thanks for sharing that, man. Yeah. And thanks so much for being here, Chris. It was really
Yeah,
cool
no,
having you. It was like it was a unique experience, honestly. Like every guest is a unique experience and
yeah, I
I'm
see
just
it,
glad that
bro.
you were here, to be honest with you. It was so cool. Early in the morning. I mean, you were so committed. We did this. It was awesome, man. Thank you.
For sure, man. I have to keep my promise to a friend.
Yeah. I suppose until next time, huh?
For sure, bro.